So 1 day ago, updating codegen to support view compilation. Template module csproj. ASP.NET compiler. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
So it's the same changes that's already in 110x for all the modules.
Okay.
So basically, if you call ms build on the solution or any project with the MVC build use option enabled, then it's going to build it in a way that the view compilation can actually happen.
Okay. MVC build views. Okay. And there is a PR. That enables C#6 and dynamic compilation. Well, C#6 for dynamic compilation, sorry. Dynamic compilation works, but not using C#6. So now we can use C#6 and Razor IntelliSense. And it's a lot of, yeah, but mostly csproj files to say, hey, now your language version is 6. So that's okay.
Can we not use 7.1?
It will require you to have Visual Studio 2017, I think.
Yeah, that's the only reason I didn't, because if there's a collective decision that Orchard development on the latest change sets should be done definitely in 2017, then it's really easy to set it up. And actually, it's funny because if you write code in VS 2015 and you write some C#7 code, for example, then you can't build it and it's going to break, but dynamic compilation can actually build it if you configure it that way. So that's really funny.
So I see that in the web configs, all the web configs. If it's defined in the in the main web config, doesn't work?
It doesn't. So to define it in Orchard web config, then it's that only makes it possible to use dynamic compilation with C#6 in general. But for Razor IntelliSense, you need it in every individual web config. It's actually Daniel did it in I don't know, some time ago in a change set, but it was reverted. So in terms of Razor IntelliSense, he did the heavy lifting.
Okay. So it's just updating the web project, so that's fine. Because updating Orchard means also updating the web config files. And a new package or two. And this line, which is obviously the same thing, but you are now using a C#6 construct.
Yeah, nice. Actually, in relation to NuGet packages, I only added. So as you can see, the individual extensions.configs are also referencing those new packages, but I didn't add those packages to the extensions packages.configs. I think we don't really need that because Orchard.web already references those, but it's not a really good practice, to use a DLL that is not defined in your packages. But I thought it wasn't necessary for all the extensions. But if you're developing an open source module and you want to add this functionality, you should definitely do that, because you don't know that your module will be used in a solution that's already upgraded to this. So it's kind of I don't know, trade-off.
So this should be a template for the code generation? Yeah,
I agree. I add that too, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So do you think we should add all the NuGet packages to every module as well?
No, I don't think so. If it works without.
Yeah, well, it works without. But yeah, like I said, I think if you develop your own module, then you should probably add it just to be safe.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, that's it. We didn't merge anything from PRs. Just asked for more feedback. Then Orchard.Core.
We can hear you type, Nick.
Darn it.
Checking out this thing just so that it won't go too far away next time. Then 7 days, Jean-Thierry. Build display. So he added, it must have been merged after that, but he added some new filters for shapes, like based on Antoine's feedback, and it's documented because now whenever we do a feature, we document it. Or we try to. So clear alternates was already there to remove an alternate from a shape. Add alternates, see here. Clear classes to remove the classes of a shape, and add classes. Okay, so now you can do these things from a liquid template to manipulate your shapes. And Benedek, I don't want to brag, but liquid support in Orchard.Core is much better than in Orchard 1, even with your module.
Well, that's actually not fair because we need limitations for that nest, unfortunately. Okay. So you can't do anything because you could break other tenants. But I see where you're coming from.
Well, you can't break anything with Orchard.Core. The liquid is safe.
Okay.
It's not compiled, Benedek, so you can't actually touch another tenant using liquid.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's nice. It's not like Razor, dude.
But he knows because they wrote a module for Orchard 1 based on liquid, so they should know.
Well, maybe he messed it up in core.
That's the goal, yeah. So this is a thing from Jean-Thierry. It must have been merged later. We'll see. This is Nick working on his branch, updating the README to add Orchard.Core Gitter room because we named it to Orchard.Core. Add backwater on some properties in templates module README. When was it? I didn't see that. Oh, that's why there are some codes sometimes and some other times there aren't. I see. I didn't see this change. Because I updated it and I see some have the single quotes and some don't. Okay, interesting. Just refactoring of the README. Fixes razor pages if no shell feature manager. Yes, the razor pages were broken in the context of the Orchard.Core samples. So the razor pages did not work because one of the services was not registered if you didn't use Orchard CMS. So now it's fixed. Unused lines in module csproj, so removing that. So Visual Studio adds that sometimes. So if you see them before you commit, you can remove it, or in the PR. CF Daniel's PR. I didn't comment on it because it's not important, but if you want to remove them, you can.
Oh, so what is this? Explain it again.
It's just Visual Studio will mark them as to be ignored. They won't appear in the csproj file in the Visual Studio. It sees that there are changes in the file, so it knows it should not deploy them, so it just says mark them as known.
Okay.
Just tag them, touch them, so it's useless. It's Visual Studio DTs.
Okay. And you saw some of those in my PR?
Yeah.
All right.
Not important. Just Jean-Thierry cleaned the files. At one point, he saw that he's like, no. Working on buildDisplay liquid filter. So this is, I think, the changes we saw earlier, probably. The buildDisplay filter. So this is build display filter. So very important if you have a content item from anything, a query or a template, and you want to use the drivers to render something, you can now use the build display filter in Liquid. So it was already available in Razor, because in Razor you have access to everything. You just get I-shape display or something like that, a content item display manager, and then you call build display. But in Liquid filters you didn't have access to that, so now there is a filter for that. Refactoring prefix generations, yeah, huge change because there were issues, conflicts with the names of the prefix and the differentiators. So now it's fixed. Took me a long time, but it's documented. So the main change is documented in the README. If I can find it here, the change is and you say, actually, apparently I removed the ticks. That's why I was surprised to see the changes, because apparently Antoine did some things that I removed without knowing he had it. Otherwise, I would not have removed it. So I documented explicitly for the content parts, for the content fields, every alternate that we can use and how they are built, and with some examples. As I mentioned last week, sometimes we just miss documentation. At least now everything is documented and you have examples on how you can use them. And also explaining how it works, how they are built. What else? So these are the alternates you have available. And you see the template names that you can use in the admin, and also the files if you want to create the file, the corresponding file, which can be a CSHTML or Liquid file, by the way.
Is that second one correct? Landing page _ summary?
Everything is correct.
Because landing page _ summary doesn't equate to a hyphen.
It does a dot.
Yeah, but shouldn't it be landing page _ summary?
No, sir.
_ services?
No, sir. The _ summary is the display type, which we use with a single underscore because we want it to appear like a dot summary at the end. The display, the shape type being landing page.
That's a bit confusing.
That's how it always worked for 7 years, on purpose.
I thought, okay, it's just a bit odd that summary. I would have expected summary to have been at the end.
It will work, but it won't match a display type then otherwise. That's how it works.
It's a bit confusing. Okay.
You look at the source code, it's also explained inside. And we took it line by line from Orchard.Core. That's how it works.
So it was always like this? Also
yes.
In Orchard, that the components, the parts are not in the same order?
It's not they are not in the same order. It's the first thing we see with a single one will be appended at the end, like a dot.
Oh. And I don't think I ever saw it.
And the thing here is the content type. And I'm sure I also mentioned it during the video that Nick, I think you pointed to the guy who didn't know about shapes. It's mentioned there. And I could point you to the code that does that. It's very simple to find actually. And it explains also why. And you see in the code why it does that. Because this will be used as the shape type, bound in the binding source. And then when we try to generate an alternate, we append the display type like this after the content type. But yeah, the match to the file itself, we'll look for the first underscore and use the dot at the end of the file.
It's odd. Okay.
This, and I also explained the differentiators, which are generated by default automatically for content parts and content fields. So in Orchard.One you had to provide a differentiator in every field. However, now you don't have to. The differentiator is built by shape differentiators identify uniquely a shape in a zone. Okay. When rendering, so for instance, if two shapes, so the idea is just to remind you, because apparently not everything is clear, and I totally understand, super complex. When we render a content item, everything is put in the content zone. Okay, if you have 5 parts and each of these parts have 5 fields, you get at least 25 shapes in your content zone. These shapes, they can come from the same field types, like the text field. So you might have multiple text field shapes if they are named text field. And if you want to identify, like to change the placement or to remove one of these shapes, if you just have the shape type like text field, you don't know which one you want to remove. So you need to be able, among all the text field shapes, to be able to pinpoint a specific one. So this is why we also have differentiator. So when we return a shape object from a driver, we can also pass a differentiator optionally. When we return a shape with the new driver system in Orchard.Core, it will know that it's from a field, from a specific part, and from a specific type. So it will build a differentiator automatically for you. We're using the part name and the field name. So it will be built this way. Shape differentiator. Where is it explained? Let me see if I go this way. You see here, part name, field name. Okay, part name, field name. So it will be, for instance, if I have a part name called article and a field called description, it will be article dash description. This will be the differentiator. Okay, and that's why I have an example here. See, body part dash description. Services dash image. I use services here because it could be also the name of a named part. If the BagPart is used, it has a name, for instance, services, so it will be services.image dash image. Okay. If the and this third alternate is very important. If the shape type that you return is not the same as the field name, then we also append the shape type. This is very important. Example, you have a field called text field, but in your text field driver, you actually decide to return 2 shapes. One maybe for the title or the label, and one for the content, another one for just summaries, whatever. Because we need to know which shape you want to remove or to place, we need to add the shape type to the differentiator. If you return a shape that has the same name as the field, we ignore the shape type. Otherwise, it will be like body part dash description, like the description field name and the description shape. But here in this case, we just do body part dash description, or body part, sorry, dash text field. Sorry, body part dash description, which is because the shape type is text field, which is as the name of the field type, the same as the field type. That's just to simplify things. So remember, in most cases, 99.99% of the cases, you will have body part dash description if description is the name of the field. And yeah, you will have that only if your field type returns more than one shape. That's the idea. And same thing for content field. This is here, content field, same thing. Part name. So maybe there's a typo here. It should be maybe part name shape type. I think this is content field and this is content part. I inverted the 2 of them. So good thing to explain and to read the documentation, because here it's wrong. And that's it. And but also there are more alternates than in Orchard 1. You see blog, body part, description, which is the name of the field, custom field summary, which is the name of the shape, if you have one. You see shape type. So, but usually these ones will be sufficient. So yeah, lots of alternates by default, and they are documented. So if you don't know which one you can override, just look at this file and you will see all the options you have. It will be easy to understand. So that's it about this change. Yep, that's it. Very important for theming. It's based on feedback from Antoine. Fixing tether URL from Jasmin. Fixed. Bad copy paste. Usually mine, because when I copy paste, I do wrong things. I reference Bootstrap instead of tether. List to mkdocs. So when we add new readmes and documentation, don't forget to add them in the main index of the documentation, otherwise they won't appear. I always do that. but Antoine fixes them. Registering strongly typed shapes to fluid. Yes, so when we create view models for shapes, which you can do in Orchard.Core, like example title part display, you see here, look at an example, a change I did. So not all the current drivers use strongly typed shapes. But in this case, I changed it, by the way, during this PR. So you see, instead of returning, oh, and by the way, here is an example of a driver which returns two shapes, one with the same name as the part and one with a different one. So this will explain the differences in the documentation. So here in this case, I decided to return only one because it's not necessary to return two. And I used a custom type title part view model as the shape type. So this thing can be a shape now, which means so this class doesn't know anything about shapes, but when we return a shape with a type like this, we create a dynamic proxy which will implement iShape and will have a classes, alternates, metadata, and everything. So we can use a strongly type, and in the view, we can just have, instead of dynamic, we can say we are using this view model. Okay, and this is much better for theming and IntelliSense. This is people who are complaining, remember, well, you know, about not being able to know which properties you have on their model, on their shapes. Now they can, because if the driver developer uses a strongly typed model, now you can do that. So that's it. And even though we'll just return a title part shape, because of the new alternates, we can also customize the title part .summary the same way and using the same strongly typed view model. Okay, so that's it. Registering strongly typed shapes to feed. Oh, and the idea to be able to use that, the issue is that then Liquid, which is super strict and secure, won't allow you to use any property of this class, or because by default it's opt-in. Everything has to be opt-in. So if you want to make these shapes available to the Liquid templates, then when you create a new view model, you just need to register it for Liquid by saying register and the type. So you opt in for this type to be usable in the views. You say it's safe, it's just a view model, it's safe, you can use it, there is no secret here. So when you create a new template from the admin or from Liquid to override the title part template, then the model you get will be of this type and you can access all the properties under that. That's the idea.
Sebastian, that registration was as a static.
Yes.
Will that have any implication across tenants?
No, that's fine. Because if you have a module and a tenant, it's available, and we want to opt in for this type for every tenant. Yes.
So if I've enabled a module with this in,
even if you didn't have
available for a tenant that hasn't enabled that module,
then you say anyone who gets an instance of title part view model will be able to use it in a Liquid template. Yes. But if you haven't enabled anything from this module, well, if you haven't enabled this feature or this module, then you will never get a title part view model in a Liquid template. And still, by doing that, you mean it's safe. So if you say it's safe, it means it's safe to read a value from a title part view model. Yes. Yes, you are leaking stuff, but you're potentially leaking stuff that you know is safe. That you know is safe. Okay, because you make it available for Liquid template, and you are doing it just for Liquid templates to allow Liquid to read the value from a title part view model. So there is
I don't like the fact that it's not registered on the tenant.
You can't, because that's how it works, or you will have to do it per Liquid context. So you will have to re-add and re-register all the properties from this type every time you render a Liquid view. So I feel much better by knowing it was registered only once for the life of the application than every time you render a view. And if you find a security issue here, please find a bug, but you won't find one.
Okay. Just seems like we're okay. That's fine.
Yeah, there is a static, but it's a well-known static. It was a use of a static for a reason, just explicitly to register this thing once and for all for the application. So you just have to tell the liquid language, you can use this type, it's a safe type. It's not like file or whatever, or database dot connection string. This one is safe, you can't access anything from that. If you have a title part view model object, there is no risk at all with that a template can break anything with that. That a liquid template can break anything with that. Okay, you can't assign values with a liquid template. You can't call what is not opt-in from a type. So that's why we chose to create view models and to just say, yeah, they're safe. There is no hidden data in that. And if there is a connection string in the title part view model, you can register a specific property from that and ignore the connection string, for instance, because you know it's a secret value and a template should not be able to access that. In this case, you should be able to access everything.
So if I've got two tenants and tenant A's enabled it, would tenant B be able to see it?
Tenant to see what? To see what?
Would they be able to get? Would they be able to access the title part view model from their tenant?
If tenant B gets magically an instance of a title part view model, it means the module was enabled for this tenant, and something return a content item, well, return a shape with this model.
Okay.
So then in this case, again, first, it can't happen unless there is a big issue somewhere. Second, even if it happens, we enabled this type, meaning it's safe. So this is safe. There is no secure data inside.
Okay. Okay, I'm happy with that.
Fixing type definition editors because I broke stuff. I forgot to assign the prefix which was properly generated. Rendering title on BagPart element. Oh, that's a huge improvement. And Antoine didn't mention that any time, so he didn't say, "Oh, I like it." Let me show you. It's beautiful. Correctly. I didn't do this change everywhere because to do it everywhere will require more things, more. So I just want my mouse, I don't want the keyboard. What's happening? Black screen. Okay, this is a blog, but what I want is not a blog. Oh, it's not running. It's not running, I will run it. And while it's running, I will go to the next one, fixing queries editor, and also gently fixed my fix. It was not working in some cases, so bug fix, fixing formatting for template documentation. Yes, because in read the docs, if you have underscore, it will be italic, so now we have to escape the underscores. Increasing documentation code font size, so I mentioned that last week. And because it was annoying, I decided to do it, and I found the documentation about documentation. And now when we go to Orchard.Core .read the docs, latest to dev. In dev, you can see that well, the code now is at the same size as the text here. So if we go to the templates documentation, for instance, now we can read these things. Okay, if you were there last week, you must have seen that it was too small to be readable. Now it's the same size as the text. Good. Fixing more documentation formatting because I forgot some of them. This one here, /admin. Tenants, I have a tenant already, so I want to use this one, agency. And if I go to the admin of the agency, and I go to content items, when you click on something which has BagParts, now you see the title of the content item inside the list. So it's before we had project. We didn't know which one it was. We had to open the preview to know which one it was. So now we are using the display text of the content item when we render the editor. So if we do add new, we can't know. Okay, so it's just something like this. But when we save, then it will be the title. And we can't do that for. So what I want to be able to do next is for any kind of widget, which are usually displayed like this, because this isn't a widget, but this is the same kind of editor, to be able to define a token, a liquid template, tokens, to define what is the text to display here. So here I'm using display text, but if you don't have a title, it will still call menu item. So maybe you just want that text or anything. So yeah, the next step is to provide a setting in the part settings to define which tokens to use to render the title like this. Okay, but it's already much better than before. When you edit the content, at least, if I can reach that. Okay. Fixing test, fixing widget creation because I also broke widgets, fixing again core editor, fixing layer metadata holder which has had the ref but later. Queries, Markdownify liquid filter. So it's a new liquid filter to render Markdown. So if you get an object and you don't want to use a display driver to render Markdown, you can render the Markdown by yourself now by using the Markdownify filter. Matching tags, little HTML fix. A new filter again, HTML class, which will convert something like this to something like that for HTML classes. And there is also the same one called handleize and handle in standard liquid. So this one is specific to Orchard because it will handle the fact that it starts with numbers. This is the one as the HTML classify in Razor, but there is another one which is standard to liquid, which is more limited, but at least it will be there by default in liquid. It's called handle and handleize. This one is a fix for the ref. This is Nick working on JSON API. This is Jean-Thierry adding something that I'm reviewing. It should get in today. This is updating the feed version for the handleize stuff and include fixes. And this is Daniel working on Azure Blob Storage. This is a fix to support proxies. This is a PR so far, so it's not yet much, but to support proxies. So the idea is that if you have a proxy between your app and the client, then we will get automatically the correct host value from the client set, even if the proxy uses an internal host. And it will work magically because it's supported already in ASP.NET Core, so there is no code to do. So removing code here is better than doing stuff like trying to read the host or the X forwarded host and things like that. It's already done by ASP.NET Core actually. I learned that. That's it. And next is Daniel, if you want to show your Azure feature.
So basically what I added are just, there were already file storage, like a generic abstraction over a virtual file store. It's not a module, it's just basically an assembly. And then there was a physical file system implementation of that. And what I added was just another implementation of that abstraction, which is specifically for Azure Blob Storage. And then there is a very, very thin module that basically doesn't contain much. All it does is just replace one of the media. There's an iMedia file store service, and by default, by the media module, it's configured to target to the physical file store on the disk in app data. And what my module does is just add another, well, actually replace the built-in implementation of that with another. It's the same implementation, but it's just configured differently. So instead of targeting one of these file system storage providers, it targets a blob storage provider instead. It doesn't know the difference because that layer is also abstracted. And yeah, basically as a demo, it would be pretty useless because you can't tell the difference.
We can just look at blobs appearing when you drag and drop files.
Yeah, basically. But as is often said about file systems, the best file systems are the ones you don't notice. So
question: so for the configuration for the blob storage is for the full app, and it adds the tenant prefix, or can I set custom configuration per tenant?
So you told me when I started out that there was no per tenant configuration story in Orchard.Core yet, so I just kind of didn't go into that. For now, I just added a section in the main app settings.json in the host, and the configuration is taken from there for the
So
module.
no configuration story. I don't think there is any app settings.json story to define configuration per tenant.
No.
But,
so it's not per tenant. It's just for the module globally. Because as I understood you told me that there is no way to make per tenant configuration settings yet.
well, depends what you call configuration setting. The configuration object. Okay, yes, the configuration object is global to all the tenants. We have options though, which are per tenant. The options are per tenant. So as long as we can set it in an option, at least, then it can be defined per tenant, and the options can be generated later using the main configuration once we define a format for having configuration per tenant.
Okay, so what I did, I just created an options class.
Good.
And I bind the global configuration to that options class.
So
using a section.
So that should work, because when one day we decide to handle the configuration differently for each tenant, like having sections in the configuration per tenant, then the option class will be able to bind to a specific tenant section in the configuration.
Yeah, okay. That's good then. Then it should be well positioned for that.
Okay, so and
the things that you configure are the connection string for your storage account, and then the container name. And just as in Orchard 1, if the container doesn't exist, the module will go and create it and set the correct permissions on it.
So you don't use any tenant prefix in the blob storage?
Well, so there's another. So there's those two, and there's also a base path that you can set.
But but you don't. Well, if you don't have anything per tenant, then that won't work in multi-tenant.
Oh yeah, that's true. So yeah, because I thought, because at some point the configuration is going to be per tenant, then I figured you would just set the base path per tenant, and that would take care of it. But what you're saying is I should instead add like a hard-coded tenant name in the path.
That, okay. or make an option to be able to enable that or disable that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one or the other.
Or have it in the option and assign a default value to the option being the tenant name when the option is resolved using a custom service, using a iConfigure option service that can take it from the tenant name.
Yeah, but I don't think that's a good idea, because then if you configure like a base path globally, then suddenly all of your tenants will store them in the same place.
No, because each tenant will have a different option object, which by default will have the same base path but a different subfolder, so a different prefix using a tenant name. And because it's an option, we can also decide to just use another convention which will put the prefix to nothing, or define it in a configuration file.
So you're saying use both what's configured in the configuration and a hard-coded tenant?
And there is nothing hard-coded, because it's just a service that is set up to assign a default value to the option property, which is prefix.
Well, I mean, I don't mean the value is hard-coded. I just mean the logic to add the tenant name to the path would be kind of hard-coded.
Hard-coded, but replaceable and You can.
And by the way, I don't mean anything bad when I say hard coded. So
No,
you
no,
don't it's not, you have to defend it. I mean, I get what you're saying.
But I think the default should be that there should be a prefix so that it works on the tenant by default.
Yeah. So you mean if you don't set a base path in the global config, it'll always add at least the tenant name to the path inside the container anyway.
I see what you mean. Base path being like later we could define different base path for each of them. Yes?
Yeah,
Why not?
yeah.
But I could see the two of them, like have a base path for everything, then the tenant name.
Yeah.
Because
yeah,
you
why
might,
not?
so maybe two
Or
options.
how about this? How about having like a token or something for the tenant name that you can include in the base path if you want, and then that'll always get replaced with the name of the tenant, like tenant name within hash or squigglies. Or
that or two values, base path and tenant prefix, which can be nothing or depends, because you might want it to be so your token will work.
Yeah, that would provide for flexibility for all the cases. I think even when you don't want to separate, then you can just delete that from your base path.
Base path, and why not just a boolean append tenant name or use tenant by base path, because that's just what we want, base path or not, and then include a tenant or not, and by default you should always include a tenant.
Yeah, and you would most likely want the tenant name to be at the end of the base path all the time, right?
And yes, because that's the goal of the base path, that it's the base of all your things. And I don't see anywhere where you will not want the tenant name in the path. Well, you might not want if you have a single tenant.
Or
so that's why I'm saying
exactly. You might use different containers per tenant, for example.
Or you might use different containers per tenant, and in this case, you have custom configuration for each tenant. So yes, a boolean will be fine, use or not. So even if a new configuration for a new tenant says, I have my custom container and I don't want my name in the path, then that's a false. So yes, a boolean will be like append tenant name to base path, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, and it should be true by default.
Yeah. And then the last value that you can configure is the public host name if you want to replace that. So that's probably something that we should talk about also separately.
That's interesting, yeah. So
we had the same thing in Orchard 1, by the way. You could override the... I don't know for how long. It was... But so that's a bit of an issue. Now, the module does... Well, it does two things. It redirects the underlying storage of the files to blob storage instead of the local file system.
Okay.
But also, when images are served, when image URLs are served to clients on the front end, they would be requested directly from blob storage. We talked about this offline a bit.
That's
which of course means we bypass everything.
Yeah, that's a bug.
Yeah,
but I will show you. So let's talk about it, because you mentioned it during the issue and on Skype and on Gitter. So how does this work? I sent you the link to the explanation from the image shop author.
I didn't have time to look at it yet.
Okay, so the idea is that I can show you on this thing. So here you see client. Here it has a picture. Well, this one is bad. Portfolio. It has a picture. Okay, this is coming from the media store. So this is the file at either on the file system or on the blob storage. This is the original file. This is what we point.
And if you inspect that element, then it'll have some resize attributes.
Yes.
On it, right?
In this view, we have a resize attribute, because it's the editor view and we don't want to display the full image. So we chose to display a custom thumbnail of the actual image. So when we render the template, we just said we took the URL. I see what you mean. I see. I think I understand my misunderstanding. So we have a URL and exclamation point with 240, 8, 240. Okay.
Yeah. And as long as you request this from Orchard, the resizing is going to happen because Orchard is going to take care of it. But if we request it directly from Blob Storage, which is currently the case, this will have no effect.
That's okay. So instead of so the issue here is that we took the path of the media store, but we should actually ask the resize service, give me the URL for this thing for the resize service, and append that. Okay, I see the issue. So we need a new service actually.
Yeah.
We need a new service so that we render so that even when you use Blob Storage or CDN, you can render a custom thing for resize images that the CDN will understand and forward to us. So this is a new service.
I think a query string is pretty good for that. I think the CDN will forward that to you if you want.
Yes.
So the path of the request would be the client requests the file from the CDN, and then the CDN requests it from Orchard, which does the resizing, and then Orchard reads it from Blob Storage underneath, right?
Yes, that's why we need two services. Like you have Blob Storage to define the map path, the public path for the blob itself. We need a public path for or resize path for the thing. So in this case, the default resize path should come with the default file storage, file system. Okay, so it should be the same in this case. It's fine, can be the same. But for Azure, it's different. For Azure, we need to still use the local one, which will then okay, I see. So we need to change it in the middleware that does that intercepts the URL. Or we can already do that in the middleware. No, it should already work in the middleware. It should work.
That's what I'm thinking. It already works. It's just we just have to phrase the URL in such a way that it'll go, like if you have configured a CDN to forward requests to your Orchard site, then we have to just give you the domain of the CDN instead.
Okay, we still need that. So today it should work with the file system and Azure Blob Storage, but tomorrow if we want it to work with a CDN, we need a new service that we can change how this URL is rendered.
Exactly.
For the resize thing. Okay, so we need a new service, which is iResize file name provider, something like that.
And that's actually not related to Blob Storage at all.
I agree. It's related to CDN or not.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's more of a CDN module that we would need.
Yep. That's why I call it resize image file name something. Okay. So that's good. And then optionally, this middleware is extensible so that instead of using the local file system to store a resized image, we could also store it on the Blob Storage. The idea would be, or to Redis. The idea is that we cache the rendered image, so we don't have to resize it every time. And the cache can be different things, either the local file system, which works super well in most cases, or if you don't want all your server nodes to render the same image, you can use Redis. But then in this case, when we serve the image, we have to load it from Redis, or use a double cache like file system then Redis, which is bad. So I will just keep it locally right now on file system. It works for all the cases.
Yes, this is true, but I think currently it will also store the resized images in Blob Storage because it uses the same underlying provider. No?
So this is wrong. It should not use the same provider. It should use a different one. So maybe the default implementation. Yes. So by default.
I didn't touch that part.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'm saying is it's a bug. I don't say it's a bug in your implementation. It's the middleware which today resolves iMedia Store, which it should not. It should resolve image resize store, which can be the media store by default, but that's on the file system. We can use actually the class for the file system by default, but we should be able to plug a different one also. So yes, so this new interface to store the images should also have the option, should also have the method to render the public thing. So actually, this is what we already have. We just need a different, you see what I mean? We have iFile store, we have iMedia file store, we need iResize media file store, and that's it.
Yeah, it could even inherit from iMedia file store, maybe.
Yes. So, yep. And then when we have a CDN1, we can have a CDN1 which stores locally on the file system, but renders a CDN public URL. Or the default. No, I know.
So what we're saying is the same abstraction should be responsible for both storing
it's
the
not-
cached resized images and also rendering the URLs.
Yes.
To,
And I don't have the same. It happens that they are the same. So let's reuse the same. It's
they
I
should
don't want-
they should be the same though.
Yes, they provide
kind
the
of
same
have to.
service. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have the same requirement. We need to be able to store something, to read a public URL, and the current implementation based on the file system, we could just change it to have a string that is what is the public base path, and done. So by default,
Correct.
it's nothing. So we have /agency, and tomorrow we can have http / my custom CDN, my domain.customcdn.com, and then /agency and so on. So we could just have a prefix on the public URL on the media file system. So we can just change what we render when we ask for the public path. That will just work.
Makes sense to me.
Good. Can you find an issue?
Yeah. We recorded all this, so
Oh yeah, so yeah, Antoine will find issue. Thank you. Good. Questions? Did I miss any conversation? Nope. Good. So I'm for the
should
release.
the PR be merged, or do we need, because this what we're talking about now is really unrelated to the blob storage stuff. So should we do that separately?
I'm not sure I want to merge it before we ship.
Oh, okay.
For
You mean
the beta
so
one.
you want to do it after the beta 1? Okay.
Yeah. Because it's not something we have tested correctly. Even if we don't use, even if we don't enable Azure Blob Storage, the fact that nothing is broken by changing all the interfaces and like all the bugs that Antoine has found with the media management, the little oddities with slashes which are missing or doubled in some very specific cases that we fixed, they might appear again because you changed some pieces of the code. And
I tested it a lot though, but of course I only tested it within the context of media library.
And there is a lot of value, but not for beta 1, I think, for the Azure Blob Storage. I would use it and test it because even for Docker containers, it would be awesome because we need to share the media somewhere. But yeah, I don't want to take any risk. Like we didn't take in the PR from Antoine to make Bootstrap 4, but he has tested it, but you never know. So we are only taking the things that really unblock scenarios that are critical for the beta 1.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Or that are super not risky. But yeah, right after. What happened with Docker? Nothing. Docker is awesome. So what I tried with, so apparently, so when do we read OC beta? Okay, so just to answer this one, I'm merging. I want to merge Gentil SPR. So we are ZBB. We are ZBB. ZBB means nobody knows. It's a Microsoft term.
Zero.
We're bouncing.
Yes. Okay. So some know. So Orchard.Core, and if we look at issues and milestones beta, boom, everything has been closed. Okay, we had lots of things trashed for beta because we know it were blocking issues. We also pull requested and merged some things which are not blocking but were safe to merge. I want to merge this one from Gentiri because it allows templating to be done correctly with JObject values, and like if you do a query or if you have a document which represents a content item and you want to render it, then you can't without that. So it's important.
I'd like the second one in the support for X forwarded host.
Yeah, so it's approved, and I tested it locally and it works. So it's not breaking anything because it's just using the host by default.
Yep.
And it will be necessary for all the things. So I will merge it for sure. It's safe.
What's the pluralization API stuff?
This is a refactoring from the localization module and package from Ishamco. I didn't spend too much time on that, so I can't say. When I have time, I will review. Right now, nothing is broken. I don't see any value for now, so I don't want to touch it. Same thing.
Okay.
Pure file management.
We should probably assign it to a milestone then. We should create a milestone for the next beta.
There is only one. Yeah, there is one, and we triage many things for beta 2 and also for RC. So if you look at the issues and the milestones, you will see we have beta, which is passed by 2 years, beta 2, RC, and backlog, meaning we have no intention so far to do it, but it's a good idea.
All right, sweet.
Okay, and we try to triage also on Thursday for Orchard.Core the issues.
Oh, we need to update the URLs on here. They're all still Orchard 2.
Yeah, easy to do. I'm sure someone will do that right now. So this will go on, and a little change I have ready to be merged, which is when we do a query, the checkbox we have already, it was, we can say, or return me a dynamic object with all the values from the query, or give me the document corresponding to the IDs that I queried. And these documents were returned as GObjects. So now I change SQL to be able to have them returned as the real type that they were supposed to be. Even though we don't specify a type, it will find it from the database. So that's an improvement. So we don't get abstract document as GObject, we get the actual document. So for views, it will be better, and for templates also. Yep. So that's it. GObject. And everything else is working, and even Antoine hasn't created any bug the last weekend or something, which is weird, or there is actually no issue. Antoine will say.
I found one right now.
Oh.
Not very critical though, but if you go to the modules view, and if you type in something in the filter box, so it filters all the modules, right? And then if you clear the filter box using the X, then it won't update.
Okay, that's good. That's fine. And you could have said, oh, I found one. I found a search box. When I type something, it doesn't work because we have many search boxes which are not linked to the UI. Actually, they do nothing. They are just placeholders.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's not, that's good. That's a good bug. Thank you. So Antoine is writing. For Docker, yes, I tweeted that I tried Docker this morning on different hosting solutions. So Azure has 2 different ways to host Docker images. Well, 3 if you count VMs and you do whatever you want on your VM. But they have managed Docker images, which are Azure App Services containers, which is using the same thing as Azure App Services, but you don't deploy an app on Kudu, you deploy a container image. You just type the image, the name of the image, and then it will deploy it for you and manage it for you. And that worked very well. I tried also Azure Container Instances, which is different than Azure App Service instance containers. And this one is more, I think it's English, bare to the metal, something like that. Is it English?
Bare metal, yeah.
Bare metal, yeah. So it's like, it just creates a Linux machine and deploys your container on that. And so far in the portal, you can't scale. It's very limited portal experience, but it's a preview just to show that you can host containers. And it worked also super nicely, and it was kind of faster than Azure App Services containers, because there is less management and layers to host the containers. I tried also external hosting solution. I tried to, on a random cloud provider, create a Linux machine, install Docker, and run it, and it just worked super fast. Was nice. So same thing in Azure. You just create a Linux Ubuntu machine, you install Docker, and with one command line, you run Orchard. If you have never seen it, let me show you. I was supposed to be in a meeting, but who cares? I have a command line I can share with you. Orchard 2.
Can you host Docker on Heroku?
Heroku, I don't know. I tried DigitalOcean because it's just Linux machines and it worked nicely. So 2 things. If you want to run, if you have Docker for Windows, like I do, just install Docker for Windows. It's a Windows app and it works. It runs very simply. Then you type that docker run a name for your machine, so Orchard CMS, for instance. So by default, the Orchard images will bind to the port 80, which makes sense. If you have IS or something, you want to bind it to another port, so you'll do -P5 or 8080 or something. This will be your local port for your Docker image. And then the image you want to deploy. And because I set up right now my Docker for Windows to run Linux images, I need to take Orchard.Core CMS Linux thing. Okay, latest means the latest official release, but I suggest you take the dev tag, so it will be :dev, and this way you get the dev branch and not the master branch, which is latest. Or if you want to host it on a server, okay, Docker run, same thing, name, and then you will bind the app data. You see /app/app data. You will say, we tell Docker, don't host it in your container, but on my host machine. Because if you restart the container, the file system of the container will be resetted. So you don't want that because you will use your site. So you just bind app data to an external folder on your host, like home Orchard CMS on Linux, or like /temp/Orchard CMS on Windows. And this way, if you restart your container, the app data, including the site settings, the media, and everything, will still be there because it will be shared. Okay, network host, so that it's a bridge network, so there is no layer between your container and your host network layers. Restart always, meaning if your server restarts, it will always restart the Docker container like a service. And you see here I use the image tag dev because I want to test the dev images. And these things are built automatically from the CI. So whenever we push to dev, we have a new dev tag, and when you push to master, we have a new latest tag. So you can even configure auto update on your container, so that when there is a webhook that you can call from Docker Hub, that will let you know that there is a new image available, and redeploy your app with the latest matching dev. We have 3. I must have mentioned that already by the past. We have Docker Hub. We have 3 tags right now. So we have 2 images, a Linux one and a Windows one. And for each of these images, we have 3 tags: latest, which is a master branch; 1.0.0 beta 1, which is always the latest available of beta 1. So meaning if tomorrow we ship a new beta 1, you'll get a new image if you point to this thing. Same thing for latest, because currently latest is beta 1, but if then after we'll ship beta 2, latest will be the beta 2, and beta 1 will remain beta 1. This way you can handle which major version you want to always release on your container, and dev is always the latest available on the development branch. This thing also is interesting if you want to, well, Azure will, like if you have an environment where you can set the where you can't run this command line, you can define where to bind the app data using another environment variable. Okay, instead of binding the local app data to an external folder, you can redefine where the app data itself is by using this environment variable. There is an example, and it's much better explained here. That's it. And so just one line of code, you type that and it will download the image and run it, and that's it. You have Orchard running. It's like super easy. One day I will write an article about that and screenshots to show you how easy it is. And you can do continuous delivery with that. That's super nice. And it's fast. It's as fast as running it on your machine. There is no VM layer. It's just a container. It's just a logical separation on your system. So it's super fast.
And we haven't seen any issues running on Linux that we were anticipating. No,
I tried it on Linux, and I set up the sites, tenants. I did the preview thing. Honestly, I tried the DigitalOcean $5 a month machine, which is 1 CPU and 512 megabytes of RAM. And I could reach like 100 requests per second with no caching. It was from San Francisco, so there was network latency. It was super fast, super quick. I could do preview and everything.
And media and all that kind of just worked?
Yeah, everything was working.
And
that's why I should show you the demo, because it's impressive to see how in 10 seconds you can deploy Orchard with just that command line.
Yeah, it's also impressive that we haven't really done any work around Linux and it kind of just works.
Well, Carl tried it once. He found 2 bugs with the app data casing and slashes, and that was it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's it. So and I'll do demo, but it's available. It's been available for a long time now. The Docker images are automatically created. If you know Docker, these are the images. If you don't know Docker, you should try it. Even to test multi-node scenario, it's very nice because you can instantiate like as many containers as you want on the same machine, and they will all share the same folder, and then you can test your multi-node scenario. You can even run a Docker image on Windows and a Docker image on Linux, sharing the same database and the shared storage for settings and blob storage for the media, and then you have it running. You can simulate the multi-node environments and testing very easily with that also. Super nice. Yeah, I tried SQLite, it was working fine. You can, that's super nice. Love it. Good. Even like if you want to try with a PostgreSQL image, well, or even a SQL Server image, there is a Docker image for SQL Server. You just Docker run -name my super PostgreSQL instance, the Docker image name, and boom, you have Postgre running. And there is a default login password if you don't say anything during the Docker run, but there is an event run variable to set the database name and Docker user, Postgre user and Postgre password, and then you can configure Orchard CMS to use that. That's 2 command lines. You have Postgre running, you have MySQL, SQL Server running, and Orchard running, and you can test it. Beautiful. You can also create your own Docker images for your own app based on the CMS or not by reusing the Docker file that we create and run, which is here, Docker file. You see, it just says I'm based on a .NET runtime. Okay, this is a multi-arc image, which means if you run it on Linux, it will take the Linux image. If you run it on Windows, it will take the Windows image. Then you say I will run on port 80. This is the URLs I accept, which is a standard environment. I create an app folder, and all the you have to build your stuff in the release folder, and then it will take all the files that are published and put them in the Docker image, and you just say when the app run, just run .NET with this variable, with this argument, and that runs your web app. So take this image and create the one for your, well, take this file and create your script for your own app, and then you can have Docker images also that you can deploy on your own containers and then on your systems. Super nice, love it. It's beautiful. You can also pre-configure the app data folder with custom sites if you want. Why not? It could be part of the setup to run. That should be part of the setup. Also, we should, honestly, so today we have images that will go on the setup screen, okay? Because the app data is empty. But we could make images by changing this file that will have already set up sites with SQLite, for instance, for different recipes. So when you load these images, the site is already there. You don't go through a setup. The site is there, and you have a username and password, and that's it. You can then just play with it without even going through the setup if we want. That's the idea. Good. Other questions? Yes, can you have the media folder outside of container? Yes, that's exactly what this, where is that? Where is that? I was on this one. Yeah, this one is -v home Orchard CMS is a folder on your host server and not in the container. So it binds the container folder here to this host server. So in the container, when we try to access app data, it's actually using this folder on the host machine. This way it's durable and it's shared across containers. Okay. Otherwise, the virtual file system inside. That's how you do that. or you use the environment variable that I specified on the Docker Hub page. So yes, that's standard Docker support. Cool. Okay, that's it. Thanks everyone. See you on Thursday, and tomorrow we should